So it's time to get the foggles on and start some actual simulated IMC training again. I hadn't done that for 14 years, so it should get pretty interesting. I'd be doing what are called instrument patterns, or I guess the regular pilot skywriting, I guess? I don't know. Find out what happens in episode 73 of the Student Pilot Cast, A Different Kind of Pattern. Oh, and I'm going to be introducing a new regular segment.
Chandler Tower, Cherokee 4121 Tango is at Chandler Air Service. We have Zulu, and we'd like a south departure, please.
What does it say to be an angel? Where does the sun...
All right, like I said, it had been almost 14 years since I'd donned a view-limiting device. I'm ashamed of that, actually. I mean, I did take the last 11 years off of flying, but then I should have done this about 11 years beforehand. I think even for non-instrument rated pilots, this should be done with an instructor or a safety pilot on board, of course, but it should be done more regularly than we probably do. One of the killers of private pilots is unintended flight into IMC. And that little bit of training we do in our private training is the bare minimum, of course. And after a year or so, it's probably close to useless if we're not refreshing and practicing that skill once in a while. So let's talk about this for a few minutes from the perspective mostly of a non-instrument rated private pilot, but we're going to revisit that in a little bit. That's what I was at the time of this training. I was a non-instrument rated private pilot. For the private pilot certificate, you have to have 3 hours of IMC training, usually using a view-limiting device to simulate IMC and VFR conditions. This set of skills that you need could save your life and that of your passengers should you accidentally get yourself into IMC while flying. And it may not even be weather-related. It could just happen to be flying in an area of very little light at night, which is somehow legal, and these skills could get you back to safety. Apparently, this VFR flight into IMC conditions ends very badly 86% of the time in non-commercial flights in fixed-wing aircraft. Those aren't great odds, so avoiding this would be the first big step, of course. But also, being ready if you do this could go a long way to saving your life. But the skills are perishable. They're fleeting when you don't practice them. So you've got to practice them, not just before the Checkride either. Ongoing. These skills involve being able to focus on the instruments and, of course, trust them over what your body's telling you. You have to be practiced at scanning them so you don't focus too much on one of the instruments to the detriment of the others. So you have to develop an effective scan, in other words. While doing that, you must be able to turn around safely or otherwise head towards VMC conditions while not descending into terrain or other obstacles without getting yourself into a death spiral and while maintaining some situational awareness of where you are and where you're heading. You have to be able to simultaneously tune in a radio to get some help and then confess that you need some help. In this situation, it would most likely be important that you declare an emergency if you're not instrument rated so that you can get focused help, get that help that you need from a controller. You might need to be guided to safety for a while, and you want all of their attention. So why do you need all of their attention? According to that famous video from AOPA Safety Foundation, on average, you might have about 178 seconds to live once you enter IMC inadvertently. So yeah, you want all the help you can get to improve your time and your odds. You know how I know that this is a perishable skill? Because I've had to keep myself current since I achieved my instrument rating over a year ago. We'll talk more about currency in another episode, but while I've stayed current, I've noticed when I've done some instrument practice how much proficiency that I've lost while not using and practicing these skills. In fact, you know that 86% number I threw out earlier? According, again, to AOPA, 1/3 of those fatalities from VFR into IMC were instrument-rated pilots. Just having the training isn't enough. It requires you to be proficient because it is a perishable skill. Okay, so back to my training. All that is to say that this was the first time in a while that I'd be training in IMC, albeit simulated, of course, in a very, very long time. So we'd be keeping it pretty simple. I'll go into a little more detail in a few minutes on this training flight coming up today, but I wanted to do something pretty exciting first. I've got a new regular segment that I'm going to introduce today on the podcast. I'm calling it Beyond the Checkride. And I'm bringing back another voice you'll recognize from the past to help me with this segment. Actually, I'm just going to bring him in right now to help me introduce it. All right, I'm so happy to have with me in the Student Pilot Cast today your old friend Kent Shook from the Pilot Cast days. Hey, Kent, how you doing?
Great. Really glad to be here.
Awesome. So Kent and I at Oshkosh, as you do, talk about ideas and things about aviation that you've been thinking about. And one of the things we started talking about are these tips beyond the check ride. So when you get into your regular flying, how you really weren't taught some basic things that you might need to know as you get out in the world and do real cross countries and do real flying with friends and family. So we're going to kick this segment off. Our first one is going to be about flying with non-pilot passengers. It's the first thing you want to do most of the time when you first get your ticket. Who was your first passenger, Kent?
You know, I'd have to go and look. It's been so long, I cannot remember. Maybe I should have looked for that before we started doing this segment. Really my first passenger was my primary CFI, because the first thing that I did after my check ride, which I did all my flight training in Cessnas, and I wanted to have the best possibility of being able to rent an airplane whenever. And so the very first flight after my check ride was going to get checked out in the Cherokees. So maybe I'll try and look at my logbook quick before we're done here and see who it was. But yeah, I've flown a whole lot of people over the years for the first time. And I mean, I think that's a thing that almost every pilot wants to do just about right away after their check ride, right? Is, you've been sitting here with your instructor for so long, and, probably spouses are a frequent first flight passenger because they want to know where all this money's going. It's a thing that I think everybody does at some point, but nobody ever really talks about what to do. And, this segment is all about experience, right? And so I'm going to tell you a few things that I've done wrong and a few things that I've hopefully done right, but we want everybody to have the best experience possible, especially those spouses, because spousal support is extremely important if you want to keep flying.
No question about it.
So who was your first passenger, Bill?
My first passenger was my wife. That's right.
Hey,
and
there you go.
I do have a little story along these lines. I was trying to be the most conscientious pilot of a new non-pilot passenger ever. Obviously, I wanted it to be a great experience for her. And so I was explaining everything I was doing in the pre-flight. I did a great passenger briefing. I was in the mode because I had just done my check ride. And I made sure I was saying, in the very unlikely event that we do have to land off airport, here are some things to think about. I was being really conscientious. And I was telling her, okay, this is what you can expect. This is what we're going to be doing. Of course, I wasn't following all of the best guidelines. It was summer in Phoenix, after all, and we were going to go take a flight up to the high country. I was on the upwind, basically. I had taken off, and I was flying straight out. I was cleared to make a right crosswind departure to the north. And again, I was explaining everything that was going to happen. And as soon as I banked right to make my right crosswind departure, I heard a little scream. So even with all of my thinking and pre-planning and making sure she was comfortable and she was expecting everything, I didn't prep her that she was going to feel the banks a little more in this small airplane than maybe she does in a commercial jetliner. So That was my one tip I want to add here, especially to a new passenger who's never been in a small airplane before. You're going to feel things more, and it's probably good to kind of explain that. And maybe even before your first banks, just say, hey, I'm about to turn right. And I wish I would have done that. She was fine. She got used to it really quick, and we had a great weekend trip, and it all worked out right. She loves flying with me. She's not scared of any of it. So everything worked out perfectly. But she did let out a little yelp when I first put her down towards the ground on the right side of the airplane when I made that right turn. So something to be thinking about.
That's actually, that brings up kind of the first bullet on my list here, which is to always explain everything that you're doing, which, if you're a new pilot, hopefully your flight instructor prepared you and coached you to do that during the check ride as well, because, the examiner wants to know what you're thinking as well. So hopefully you're in practice when it comes to what you're going to be talking about throughout the flight. I mean, really, for your passengers, it's all about comfort. So think about what you're saying. Tell them what you're doing. I mean, even something as simple as a run-up will confuse somebody who's never been in a small airplane before. So, hey, we're just going to check a couple things on the engine. We'll rev it up here, but we're not going to go anywhere yet, and that sort of thing. Plane might bounce around a little bit from the prop wash and that sort of thing. I can definitely tell you that what you don't want to do is right after takeoff, when you realize you forgot to turn your transponder to altitude from standby before takeoff, you really shouldn't say, oh,
or, oops.
Because that's a very inconsequential thing, but...
or, uh-oh.
Yeah, that's one of the things I did early on.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yep, that was one of my things that I did early on that was not a great idea. So going along with kind of keeping them in the loop as to what's going to happen, you also want to fly really, really smooth. For some reason, a lot of people, they're like, oh, I'm a pilot now, and they feel the need to either show off or show their passenger every maneuver they had to learn to get their pilot certificate.
Yeah, don't do stalls, right? Don't do stalls with a new passenger.
Exactly. And, my first ride at a GA plane was with my uncle, and I loved it. But I do remember he stalled the plane a few times, and, he was showing me all those things, and I was fine in the airplane. I ended up getting sick when we got back on the ground. Later on, so it might not have had anything to do with the flight. But yeah, that's a thing that I have done that with some people, but only people who were actually interested in learning how to fly and, in fact, were concerned about what stalls were going to be like. And that guy went, oh, that's all it is? But yeah, if he had not been a person who was interested in learning how to fly and already had some concerns about stalls and wanted to see a stall, then yeah, that's definitely a thing that you don't want to do. Along with that, you'll sense there's this comfort theme throughout everything that we say here. Try and fly when there's as little turbulence as possible. I don't know what causes the most turbulence down in your area, but up here you get a lot of turbulence in the spring and fall because you have when you get the solar heating on the ground from the sun, the ground is starting out really cold in the spring, and so the temperature difference between the light areas and the dark areas is pretty extreme. And then as you're into summer, or if you're in the middle of winter, there's very little thermal activity. Time of day makes a difference, though, with that. Of course, late afternoon or mid-afternoon as well are both going to be really turbulent most of the time. Yep. If surface winds are really, really strong, you'll get some mechanical turbulence and that sort of thing. So do your best to go up at a time where you're not going to have as much turbulence. One thing that I really like to do, if they're someone that I think is really going to be into it and doesn't have any motion sickness issues to worry about or anything like that, sometimes what I'll do is I'll take them for a $100 hamburger and we'll fly somewhere in the evening as the sun is going down and then eat some food and then fly back at night so that they can experience that as well.
That flight at night is usually very smooth.
Yes.
Yep. Out here in the desert, we get a lot of lifting action in the summer and the spring and the fall because it's still hot at those times as well. So we get a lot of that. And then, of course, out here in the west where we have lots of mountains, we get a lot of mechanical turbulence from wind as well. So, yeah, it's a good thing to think about. Go when turbulence is lighter. Speaking of that, one of the things that ForeFlight's been working a lot on is being able to see actual turbulence based on people using their sentries, and the ADHARs that are part of that are giving a lot of data back to ForeFlight. And so that might be a tool to help you choose a time and a day that's maybe a little lighter on the turbulence. So something to think about just popped into my head.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's one of the newest features of ForeFlight, the actual reported turbulence. And they're, I guess, using something specific about the sensor package that they have in the Sentry to be able to detect turbulence. And if you sign up with ForeFlight to submit the data from your Sentry at the end of a flight, then you get that feature for free, and the rest of us have to pay for it. But that's, I mean, I'm kind of excited to see where things go with that feature. I haven't pulled it up recently, but I hope that there's lots of people signing up to do that and giving us lots of data so that feature becomes really useful, because that is really a great tool that we have not had anywhere in aviation before.
Yeah, automatic and real PIREPs without you having to do PIREPs. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
What else? What else can you think of that people should be thinking about when they take their first passengers?
Well, I do have to say I was just looking, and my first flight was my best friend as well as someone else that I knew, and I did exactly the wrong thing with what we were talking about. It was a late afternoon flight at the end of May in Wisconsin, and it was really, really bumpy. Even 20 years later, that was some of the worst turbulence I've had.
Oh, my gosh. Great first flight.
Yeah, and you were mentioning mountains in the Southwest. I think the worst turbulence I've had, at least in terms of being more than just one bump, an extended period of turbulence, was flying west out of Albuquerque. So, yeah. Anyway, that friend, I know he's flown with me at least one more time, but he's not super eager to go with me. So that, may be why.
Yeah, you can't definitely attribute it to that, I guess, but it certainly didn't help, I'm sure.
Yeah. Well, and I guess you should be prepared with barf bags and all that kind of stuff.
Good point.
You can just use a Ziploc if you don't have the special airplane ones. But once in a while, people will steal barf bags off an airline flight and give them to me.
They've got stacks of them. You can just ask for them.
Yeah. I've actually only ever had one person who had an issue with that I was flying. Well, I guess two. Once in Part 91 personal flying and once in professional flying. The second one had just had his COVID vaccine, and he got the was it Johnson & Johnson that was making everybody sick, and so he was actually getting sick before he even got to the airplane for us to fly him home. So that one definitely wasn't my fault. But,
so tell me a couple of reasons that you've thought about that it's so important to make your passengers comfortable.
Well, we mentioned one already, which is that you want them to come fly with you again, right?
Yeah.
But the other one is, I used to train truck drivers, and I used to always take my trainees flying at some point. Usually when they were getting successful with things, that was kind of the reward of, hey, I think we're almost done and going to get you in your own truck. Hey, do you want to go flying? And one of them that I specifically remember, his brother had been a cargo pilot and had taken him flying in a 310 and was just making jokes about, gee, hope our wing doesn't fall off and stuff like that. And, was just purposely trying to freak him out because, I mean, I guess that's what brothers do sometimes. But,
It's that or a noogie. So.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, he never got on an airplane again, and he wouldn't go flying with me, and I'm not even sure he flies on the airlines anymore. GA is just a very, very, very small community, but we do need to make friends with the rest of the world because their taxes pay for our airports in a lot of cases. And so, next time your local airport is in trouble, you don't want that person whose brother freaked them out and they never went flying again to be speaking up at the town meeting and saying, screw those guys, let's get rid of all those dumb little airplanes, right?
Yeah.
You want to have a bunch of people that you've taken flying and given a wonderful experience, and hopefully you've taken their kids flying, maybe in Young Eagles, and maybe you've brought them a puppy with pilots and paws or something like that. Show people the good side of aviation, and
they'll pay it
if
back,
they are
right?
going up with
Yep.
you. Absolutely. We need more friends of this industry.
For sure.
So that's
Yeah.
incredibly important.
Yeah, so if I could sum it up, 1, don't freak out your passengers. Find ways to not freak them out or make them sick. And 2, let's make friends outside of aviation.
Absolutely.
We want all the non-pilots to like the airplanes and like flying with us. It gives us more opportunities to fly if they want to fly with us, right? So that's part of our challenge.
Yep, just make it smooth and comfortable and fun. And the fact that you're a pilot is the coolest thing in the world to them.
Yeah.
There's nothing else you need to show off,
That is a really good point. Yeah, that is a really good point. Well, Kent, this was super fun to reprise our roles on the Pilot Cast a little bit and get back together. So appreciate you coming
Absolutely.
on. And I'll say to the SPC listeners that we're going to be doing more of this, and we're going to do a new topic for a lot of episodes. So this feature will hopefully keep going, and we'll hear a lot more from Kent and the wisdom of all of the experience that he has. So appreciate you coming on, Kent. It was really fun.
Well, and I hope people will write back in and offer their comments and maybe give us some ideas of things to talk about on this, because I've been flying these little airplanes for 20 plus years now, and I still definitely don't know it all. So
Yep.
Tell us what you want to hear, and we'll talk about it.
So that's our first installment of the new segment, and I hope you love where we take it. We'll figure it out over time, the best way to bring these topics to you, and I'm sure we'll get better and faster at it. In other words, most of the time I think they'll be a little shorter than that, but it's our first one, so cut us some slack. Like we mentioned in the segment, though, we'd love suggestions on what to cover in future episodes. We have a decent list going already, and the plan is to keep adding them to most episodes until we simply run out of topics. So that's where you come in. Don't let us run out of topics. So send your suggestions to me at bill@studentpilotcast.com. Thanks all. All right, so let's get back to today's flight. I'd be starting simple today, like I said earlier, and doing what are called instrument patterns. These are simply little instruction cards that tell you what patterns to make in the sky. Unfortunately, the ones we were using didn't write anything cool like a skywriter would. Nothing like that. They were simply directions to fly certain headings or relative headings, altitudes, etc., and told me how long to fly them, how long to fly each leg. This is designed to help me practice my instrument scans and divide my attention across altitude, time, heading, standard rate turns, all that stuff. Basically, it starts letting me practice in a very simple way all the things I have to do as I put instrument flight together and as I get better and better at it. If you're not familiar, I'm sure you'll get the picture as you hear more of the training. Essentially, I'd be flying seemingly random patterns based on these little cards that they gave me and timing each leg so I know where and when to start another turn in the pattern, another leg, if you will. So let's get on with it. Oh, and I should mention that I'm breaking this flight up into 2 because of the new Beyond the Checkride segment. I didn't want it to get way too long. So to kick this one off, I'll throw in my ground call. But in the same theme of keeping this shorter, I'll cut a lot of the monotony out where I can. I'm trying to strike the right balance of helping you guys feel like you're there on the flight with all of the other traffic, the practice area congestion, the context of the flight, but at the same time, not bore you with every minute of the flight. So definitely let me know how I'm doing. Give me feedback on how I'm editing the flights up. That said, here's that ground call.
Falcon Ground, Red Rock 60 at spot 5, would like a south departure, and we have Papa.
Red Rock 60, Falcon Ground, runway 48, taxi Delta.
That us?
4 right, taxi via Delta.
4 right, taxi via Delta, Red Rock 60. Couldn't hear the beginning part.
Oh, you're good. All right, clear the intersection. Up. That guy's going to the right, perfect. And clear the intersection, coming left.
Guy's coming this way.
He's just clearing the runway,
Okay.
so we're good. Yep. Good SA though. Yep, he's gonna call ground right now.
After taxiing out, we did the run up as usual.
Okay.
So what you do with
Falcon Ground, Oxford 6881.
hold that down.
Oxford 6881, Falcon Ground, taxi for Delta.
Via Delta, Oxford.
All right, run up. Parking brake is set. Mixture rich. Flight controls.
Falcon Ground, Oxford
Free and
4955,
correct.
spot 3, AJ departure with
Throttle
information pop-up.
2000.
Oxford 4955, Falcon Ground, runway 48, taxi for Delta.
All right, Magneto's left.
4 right, taxiing via Delta, 4955.
Barely a drop, that's nice.
Barely. And right.
Really nice.
Barely. Okay, bolt on. Carb heat. Barely. Wow. Amps.
All right.
Probably
so,
here, huh?
Yep, exactly.
Okay, 13.6 volts. There's no ammeter?
You're
Oh.
producing positive
Okay.
amps.
Vacuum, we're at 5.3. Oil and fuel.
Temperature, oil pressure,
All in the green.
and verified.
Okay. And throttle back to idle. So it doesn't die.
Bring it up to 1,000.
1,000.
Cool. We missed one thing on the checklist there. I believe flight instruments are afterward. Perfect.
Okay. So we're still a little tilted.
Little
I'll
tilted.
try and remember that.
Should
Where's
be
the compass?
magnetic compass is over here.
Oh,
So we can set it to about 320.
0. Okay.
Oh, that's 340.
My bad.
Oh, you're good. There you
3,
go. Right about there.
2, 0.
All right.
Yes. You already put something in there?
Oh yeah, I threw Chandler.
Okay. Are we going to be transitioning Chandler, or are we going to be
We're
above
just
their
gonna be above.
airspace?
We're gonna be above
Okay.
them. Yep.
All right. And
Transponder. Someone was squawking yesterday. I guess they did like a VFR, so I just set us to VFR. So we're
okay,
good.
you got us. Okay, 1200. All right, so we are going to do a normal takeoff.
Yep.
We'll probably, she'll probably put us in a right pattern to go south,
Yep,
right?
Yep, exactly.
At 400 feet, you're going to ask me to put my goggles on?
Yep.
Which, I don't remember where I put them. I put them somewhere to be handy. And
I can grab mine if need, but
they are.
perfect. There you go. You can just
Put them on my head.
Good deal.
Okay. If we have any problems with the engine or otherwise, while we're on the ground, we're going to brake and
Cool.
get off the runway. If we are rotated but have runway remaining, we're going to land and heavy brake. If we don't have any runway remaining, we're going to head over maybe to Phillips Road or to the golf courses over there.
Perfect.
If we can't gain altitude. All right. Anything else?
Nope. Switch over to tower. And when we come to a stop, you can throw in 12285 to kind of help yourself out, stay ahead of the airplane.
That's the south practice area?
Yep. 85. There you go. And when this guy starts rolling, Then you can call them up saying, Falcon Tower, Red Rock 60 holding short, 4 right.
Fuel pump is on, flaps are
And
set
landing
to
light.
0.
Landing light, there you
Landing
go.
light is on.
Perfect.
Right. Falcon Tower.
Yep.
Falcon Tower, Red Rock 60 is holding short of 4 right, ready to go.
Red Rock 60, Falcon Tower, good morning. Right turn southbound approved, wind 030 at 14, runway 4 right, clear for takeoff.
Clear for takeoff on 4 right and right turn approved, Red Rock 60.
A nice guy.
Yeah.
Good vibes. All right, sir, takeoff is all on you.
Have a bit of a left crosswind.
Yep, just a little bit, so you can add a little bit of left aileron.
All right, here we go. Airspeed is alive, engine instruments are green. And we're at 65. Rotate.
Falcon Tower, helicopter 3A Golf Mike, ready to go with Yankee 2.
Helicopter 8 Golf Mike, Yankee 2 pattern approved. Inbound traffic for Yankee 2 pattern 4 miles northwest.
5.
Yankee 2 approved, doing that traffic, helicopter 8 Golf Mike.
Okay, so at about 400 feet, my instructor took over the controls so I could get my foggles on and start the simulated IMC. I'll go over some of the requirements to get your instrument rating in the next episode, but this would basically be my life in the airplane for the next couple of months. Here you go.
All right, I'll take the controls.
All right, your
You can
controls.
put your goggles on.
All right,
You got the airplane?
my controls.
All right, you can come right heading 220.
Right, heading 220.
And we'll climb up to 3,700.
3,700.
Universal 19, traffic helicopter left downwind, midfield, Yankee 2 pattern.
Traffic in sight, Universal 19.
You can start your wings level. There you go. And we can do our after takeoff checklist. And really small movements. Don't need to go crazy with it.
After takeoff, flaps set to 0, mixture rich. Landing light is off. Back on my heading, and we'll go level off. Okay.
You can level off
Fuel
right above
pump
that
off.
3.6.
Say again?
You can level off right here.
Yeah.
And now you can turn direct to 190.
190.
Yep, left 190. Stay out of Phoenix's airspace.
Tower Oxford 7251, contact arrival with information pop-up. Request multiple foot.
And you can descend down, watch your altitude.
Oxford 7251, Falcon Tower, good morning, make left traffic, runway 4 left.
There you go.
Left traffic,
Where do you want
Oxford
RPM?
7251.
Just about 23.
Out of that yellow, right?
Yep.
Okay, after.
All right, cool. Out in the field and not look outside.
It's a little weird.
Yeah, it is.
It's been a long time since I've done that.
Welcome to instrument.
Red Rock 60, traffic 2 miles south of your position, Diamond Star 3700, indicated also southbound, frequency change approved, good day.
Frequency change approved, and we're looking for that traffic reduction. I don't see him.
Oxford 7049, traffic 12 o'clock.
I'll worry about him. You just worry about the airplane.
Indicated 4700, frequency change approved.
So we're staying clear of gateways, staying clear of the Phoenix Bravo, and the shell starts at 4,000, so 3,700 is perfect.
Okay.
We're going to fly right over the top of Chandler. You can do your cruise checklist for now.
Okay. Cruise checklist, throttle, set for cruise, clear lean, heading indicator. We at 190.
Yep.
Okay. Fuel, already got the timer going.
South Spencer, Air 586, 4,500 over Gila River Memorial, heading towards Maricopa Mountain Dews, low point stalls, South Spencer. South Spencer, just North Maricopa Mountain, maneuvering between 4,000 and 5,000 feet southward.
Oh, it's so busy down there already. This is going to be tough.
Really?
This is going to be tough, yeah.
Okay, so we're flying along and we hear this, the segment that I've got coming up. I'm adding this in because I want to give a little shout out to APS where they do, well, more than do, they basically wrote the book on what's called Upset Prevention and Recovery Training, or UPRT. My youngest son is about to start A&P school, and recently he started working at APS, and he is loving it. They have 8 extras and a couple of experimental jets for high-altitude UPRT as well. Well, we happen to hear a few of them in a section of the Southeast practice area, having a little bit more fun than we probably were. I mean, I like instrument training and all, but here was their call. Notice the call sign. They use upset as the beginning of the call sign for all of their planes.
At Southeast practice area, upset 2, we have 4 extra 300s operating east of the canal from north of the cement plant to the crop circle, 6 to 9,000 feet, stall spins and aerobatics for 3-5 minutes southeast.
Man, that sounds like a lot of fun, right? I know they're mostly doing serious training. I mean, they do fun aero rides too, but most of their training is for professional pilots being sent there by their company or by the military. But that doesn't mean it's not fun, right? Well, this is how we reacted at the time in the airplane.
Sounds fun.
That sounds awesome. I'm so jealous.
And I'm still kind of jealous. My son, who started working there recently, is apparently going to be getting a pretty cool ride soon, part of their perks as employees. So I'll live vicariously through him for at least a little while. That said, I did have my own little aerobatic adventure very recently, but again, in the interest of time, I'll cover that hopefully in the next episode, so stay subscribed. All right, jealous pilots aside, let's get on with the flight.
There you go. Really good job. So far, so good. We'll just kind of get clear of everyone's airspace, and then we'll,
Vice Chair Sky 4190, Victor over Rittenhouse at 3,500, heading back into Gateway, last call 70.
I realize we don't have a lot of bumps, but this is so much easier than the sim.
Yeah.
Well, I know I'm not doing anything yet.
Yeah, all you're doing is straight and level, but yeah, I know what you mean.
But even this, it's like, at least it holds altitude. The error on the attitude indicator is giving me some problems, though.
Is it really?
Well, I try and hold it level, and then I realize I'm turning left.
Turn. Okay.
So I just have to keep remembering.
South Spencer, Air Still 586 is 4,500, about 3 miles to the northwest of Maricopa Mountain. Setting up for slow flight stall, South Spencer. Southeast practice area, Skyhawk 1752, at 5,600, descending down to 4,500 at over Coolidge, heading to the gap, southeast. Southeast Berkshire, tag 115.
All right.
The Wichita pad, heading to the gap, 3,500.
For sake of spacing, time, and traffic, we're going to just start our first leg on a south heading. So we're going to kind of do everything reference to south.
Okay.
Because there's a lot of traffic and there's a lot of airspace that we have to worry about. So we'll just continue on this heading. And
Oxford 10, 4,300 over Renaissance, climbing up.
We'll climb up to 4,500.
4,500.
Yep. Don't forget to put in your mixture when you climb and then power.
Yes, sir.
Let me jump in here real quick for some local information. You're going to hear my instructor saying Bob Chule, I think, or something like that, a bit in this episode. I honestly thought it was a joke as I was re-listening to the recording because we do pronounce it that way as a joke sometimes, something I learned to do as my training progressed. But I think in this case he might have been serious as I listened more, which is understandable. My instructor was not from this area, and as I mentioned in the last episode, was new to instructing and to the airport. So how would he know? There is this tiniest of communities south of the East Valley of Phoenix called Bapchule. It's spelled Bapchule. So you can see why some would pronounce it as Bob Chule, which is what we do when we're flying often, so much that I sometimes have to think about how it's really pronounced. We've come up with all kinds of ways of saying it, sometimes with an English accent, sometimes with a Southern accent. It's all fair game. I've never even been to this place on the ground before, and when I say small, it's like a couple of buildings. But it's surrounded by open desert, so it makes for a nice reference point from the air. It's easy to see, and it stands out against that open desert. And it's on the way to a lot of places if you're coming out of the Gap over Chandler. The Gap is that airspace gap between the Phoenix Class Bravo and Williams Mesa Gateway Airport, and where you come from Falcon Field when you're kind of heading to the south. You can go through this little gap where you get through this airspace, so it's called the Gap. So we use Baptual all the time as kind of, I know where I'm at. If you're observant, you'll hear at least one other pilot on the radio pronouncing it correctly during this episode. Points to the first listener who reaches out to me with the timestamp of when that happens. Anyway, I didn't want you wondering what we're talking about every time my instructor is on the radio and he's talking about this Bob guy, Bob Choulet. I don't even remember. We've said it so many different ways, I don't even remember what he was saying. But you'll hear it. So let's carry on. I'll let most of this play until about the halfway mark of the flight so you can follow my patterns. But I'll cut out a bunch of silence or near silence so the times won't necessarily match with the wall clock while you're listening on the timing I'm doing for the legs. Here you go.
We'll be right behind you.
And when we reach Bob Chule, then we can start our instrument pattern.
You want me on 180 or still on 190?
We'll try.
We're going to do 190 for now.
Okay.
And then when we start our instrument pattern, we're going to go 180, get ourselves established 4,500, and then we'll start that instrument pattern.
All right.
Yep, Brende, cool.
Yep.
Sweet.
And just to make sure I heard correctly, you said 4,500.
4,500, yep.
Got it.
And you can come left 180 for spacing with another traffic.
180.
We're going to go left, actually, 160.
160.
160, level off 4,500. All right, you can start your level off.
Southern pressure, sky 4230 golf, 3 to the south, Texas, half 3,500, head for the Gap, southeast.
And you can start to slow yourself down to 100 miles an hour.
Going to be like 2150, right?
Around that, yep. So that's called our control performance. So RPM for a 100 miles per hour, perfect. And you can get yourself back established on a 180 heading.
All right,
and when you're ready, you can start your instrument pattern. Very nice job so far, Bill.
Give me just 1 second here to get my speed and altitude.
Get yourself situated.
Sorry about that.
Oh, you're good. I know, it's hard with the attitude indicator.
Only in.
But with our attitude indicator, we can also reference other instruments to make sure that we're turning right. Coordinator, we got our heading indicator.
Tango is about 4 miles to the west of Mr. Volcano.
Okay, so I've got a bit of a problem. I can't,
descending to 3,000.
I can't seem to hold altitude and get it to 100 miles an hour without going into the yellow.
Okay.
What do you want me to do?
Yeah, we can add in a little bit of power. We'll go 110, just for that sake.
Okay.
Let's stay at 2,300 RPM.
Reservoir 65%, he's current.
And that should give us about 110 or so, 105, and we'll just use that. Just kind of get yourself trimmed out. Perfect.
Not quite there yet. Sorry.
Don't apologize. I need you to get comfortable with the airplane before you start doing anything. I know these airplanes really aren't easy for instruments, so you're doing great. I'd be doing the exact same thing you're doing. South practice area, Red Rock, 60s, 4,500, Bob Chule, heading southbound, maneuvering, staying at 4,500 south.
Okay.
South practice South 1752 Tango, I believe which is at entering southeast.
I'll help you out for today with a timer. This one doesn't have a timer.
Okay, I can
Because 80 Whiskey does, but not this one. I can help you out with it if you need.
Time to change tanks.
Okay, perfect. So your fuel pump should come on, and then we'll switch tanks to the right.
All right,
I
fuel
got the
pump.
airplane if you need.
Fuel pump is on. Switch tank.
Cool.
Fuel pressure.
Good.
Fuel pump off.
Perfect.
Fuel pressure. All right.
Good deal.
The timer. Okay, my airplane.
Your airplane.
South, right?
Yep.
Southwest backjet, Oxford 6154, 5,500 over the north test track, 5 pilot maneuvers.
Okay, so if we get started here. All right, starts right here for 1 minute. Ready?
Sir.
Going 45.
It's the first leg, just 1 minute.
Right. I meant 45-degree turn
Oh,
to the
yeah,
left.
yeah.
Sorry.
I was about to say.
I should enunciate better.
Oh, you're good.
Southeast Rex Oxford 10, 65 over Water Ski Lake. We'll be setting up for
15
slow
seconds
flight southbound.
to go. Turn.
Track 130 off with the tab 35 for the gap loss call tally.
Southeast practice Oxford 7049, Water Ski Lake 5,500 maneuvering.
That is a 1 minute leg.
Sir. We'll do a standard 180 degrees turn to the right.
Okay.
Unpublished call, top left.
Take 1 minute.
Yep. Right at 1 minute, we should be heading about 320.
Maricopa Town. Do a stall, stop Spencer.
There we go. Standard rate.
Be sure to compensate for that loss of lift.
Good.
Very nice.
Right there, right on.
Look at that.
1 minute.
On the money.
Okay, then this leg is
30 seconds.
2 minutes. Don't scare me like that. I am on the right leg, right? It's 2 minutes?
I thought you were on. I thought you just did your.
Oh, you're
180
right.
degree
You're
turn.
right. You're right. Okay.
I was about to say.
I was thinking the wrong one.
I
want to go north.
There you go.
In 5 seconds.
I was about to say 2 minutes. All right. That's
a long one. Yeah. Okay. Standard rate. Little back pressure.
Yep. Learn from your mistakes. That's perfect.
Should be about 15 seconds. Whoop. Overdid it a little. All right. Now this one's 2 minutes.
Southbound Tangos over Blackwater. 5-9 descending 3-5. No emergency sent with a couple of heavy.
Southwest Air, Red Rock, 60s, 4,500 north test track, northbound. We maneuver circles south. Yep, keeping up that scan.
Test track there, Oxford 5841. Over the north test track at 6,700 spirals. Southwest. Southeast Rex area 2679, 5,000, 3 to the east of Mr. Volcano, power off southeast.
All right, 1 minute to go.
Southwest Rex area, over the green field southwest of Firebird Lake, ground reference maneuvers, southwest.
Southwest practice area, Cessna 734, Hotel Charlie is at 4,500 over Babshul, moving westbound. Southwest.
$30 seconds. I'll be making a turn to 045.
Yes, sir. 045 heading.
Go. Standard rate. Go, reset.
Southeast Fracture, 4,500, stack pit sounding to Chandler, Southeast.
I don't know why we ballooned so much.
Probably some turbulence.
Okay.
Unstable air.
This one is 45 seconds.
45 seconds, you're about halfway there.
65, Mr. Volcano, stall southeast.
All right, 10 seconds. I'll be doing a 270. Right?
Yes, sir.
I'll be turning to the south.
Yep, you're gonna be heading
To
south.
the left. Right now.
Yep.
Standard rate. I could lose a tiny bit of altitude.
South practice area, order X60s, 4,500, Bob Chule, you're gonna be heading southbound. South. Phil, you're doing a great job.
Thank you.
Keeping it right at standard rate, you're keeping the scan going, and I know you are because your altitude's good,
Yeah.
your coordinator's good, your airspeed's good, your power setting's good. Fantastic.
This is going to be fun, man. Challenging, but fun.
Yeah, oh yeah. It's just the beginning. Then you're going to be doing checklists in the next lesson with this.
Yeah.
And changing airspeeds and doing all kinds of stuff. So we can start talking about control performance.
All right, I'm going to be rolling out on south.
All right, that'll have to do it for the instrument patterns for today, and we'll pick this back up next week. But it was good to be doing actual simulated IMC training again. I was doing all right, but I was in kindergarten with these patterns. This rating would get challenging for sure, juggling all of the new knowledge, the new skills in the cockpit, and mostly just how busy everything would get, and I couldn't get enough of it. You know what else I can't get enough of? Yep, you're right, comments from you guys. As usual, I want you to know that I'd love hearing from you. Again, you can send me email anytime at bill@studentpilotcast.com. It's easy, and I don't charge that much for emails. It'll only cost you, let's see, 1, carry the 2. Oh yeah, it's free, and it's easy. You can also find me on X using the handle @BillWill. That's Bravo India Lima Lima, Whiskey India Lima. I know a few of you have reached out that way, and that's cool too. However you do it, let me know what you're up to in aviation. If you're flying, let me know what and where you're doing it. And let me know what you're learning right now too. Seriously, I love it. So I'm in the middle of my first training under the hood in a while. And like I said, we'll finish up this flight next week. But I'll be doing a lot of this over the next little while. Like I said, I couldn't get enough of it. There would come a time when I would long to look out of the airplane again. But for now, I was learning and practicing some new skills to me, and that usually keeps me really happy. It's like a fix I was able to get a couple of times a week, sometimes more. I'd also start flying a bit in the basic training device or the basic sim that I'd use for some of my training hours. In fact, I had done my first sim session a day or two before this flight, where I was introduced to the instrument patterns in the sim before we did it in the airplane. I'll talk more about training in the sim in future episodes a little bit. Nobody wants to hear audio of a sim session. But suffice it to say right now, it's not nearly as fun as it sounds. The real airplane is way, way better. I found the sim actually really hard to control. Nothing felt as natural as the real plane, and the controls were just too simulated feeling. So yeah, real flying is best. That said, there is a good place in trading for the sim. And the better, like the more expensive the sim, probably the better it is. But I much prefer real flying. I use my own non-certified gaming sims to practice certain things, including procedures from time to time. While it's not loggable and not nearly as fun as the real thing, it can be instructive and helpful. So yes, there is a place for it. But I'll keep bringing you to the real thing. And maybe talk about some of the sim experience that I got during this training. So until next week, when we finish this one up, just remember I was loving it so far. I was learning a ton, and I had no idea what was in store for me, even if I thought I did. I was blissfully ignorant of the brain overload that I'd soon feel. I would actually soon be an overloaded pilot who could only stammer nonsensical phrases like hold entry while looking at my thumb and VDP what? I might have even been heard saying something like, why does he keep telling me how far I am away from this final approach fix, and what was all that other stuff he said? I'd figure it out soon enough, I guess.
The music for today's episode is To Be an Angel by the Canadian band Uncle Seth. You can get more information and subscribe to the podcast feeds on the web at studentpilotcast.com. Remember, any instruction that you hear in this podcast was meant for me and for me alone in the situation I was in at the time. Please do not try to blindly apply anything you see or hear in this podcast to your own flying without thinking it through on your own completely. If you have questions about any aspect of your flying, please consult a qualified CFI.